We spend nearly a third of our waking hours at work. But the unfortunate truth is that for many of us, that's time spent at a job we've outgrown, or a job that makes us unhappy, or a job that we never wanted in the first place. But we stick with it and say things like, "I'll never find a better job. I'm too old to make a change. Isn't everyone miserable at work?" It's time to get unstuck, and Strawberry.me can help. Strawberry.me matches you with a certified career coach who helps you go from where you are to where you want to be. Your Strawberry.me career coach helps you get clear on your goals, create a plan, and keep you accountable. Don't leave your career to chance. Head to strawberry.me/dreamjob to claim a special offer and get started. That's strawberry.me/dreamjob. Start building the career you actually want. This is Find Your Dream Job, the podcast that helps you get hired, have the career you want, and make a difference in life. I'm your host, Mac Pritchard. I'm also the founder of Mac's List. It's a job board in the Pacific Northwest that helps you find a fulfilling career. One of the best ways to get good at job hunting is to talk to people who do it well. That's why once a month, I interview a Mac's List reader who found a job they love. Our guest today is Mitch Kutin. He's a recruitment specialist at the University of Oregon. Changing careers can be daunting, especially during uncertain times. In a story you can find on the Mac's List website, Mitch shares how he turned a pandemic pivot into a new career in recruiting. Mitch joins us today to talk about how he made this switch, the strategies that helped him land the job, and the lessons he learned along the way. Well, Mitch, why do you love your job?
I work at the University of Oregon. Go Ducks. I love my job because the team that I have found myself on is just one of those special units that I feel is so difficult to know you're going to step into, although I had very good feelings through the recruiting process. We do, I think, an extraordinary job at keeping the team feeling like a team, being a cohesive unit as we work together to cover all the facets of HR, payroll, and business ops. An example of this, our director, Courtney, has us do in-person weekly meetings on Wednesdays. We start these meetings off by going over our core values, kind of giving people just shout outs and kudos for doing well at exemplifying those values that we as a team really hold centered to how we're doing our work. It's a practice that I take notes on, the culture management, because it shouts out your personal successes, but always in collaboration with either a partner unit we're working with, frequently team members who we're working with on specific projects, and doing it in person. I have just found to be so good at reinforcing the team building component, the good culture component, and brings us into a space where, yeah, you get better the longer you're in that space. But like after a full year of being with the university, like you can really see how, we around the team that I'm on all have good ideas of the work we do with each other, the work our colleagues do. And it's a very comfortable, very successful team environment to get to work on. And I could not be happier with where I landed for my job search.
Well, terrific. Congratulations. And you came to this work after a career pivot during the pandemic, Mitch. What was the hardest part about making that change?
Oh, wow. So I think it's a two-front answer. There was the hardest part about stepping away from what I was doing before. I was the operations manager of a Ninja Fitness gym. It's a small mom and pop style fitness location, and you really get to know the members. 400 people coming in and out, taking classes, doing private training, and you have a really solid relationship with the community around you, especially as the operations manager overseeing all of the physical training. So leaving that was difficult. There was a real, season of my life that I loved, and stepping away from it was intentional, important, the right decision, but not without, the meaning and thoughtfulness that should come with that kind of a goodbye. Going from a professional position where you are on your feet, overseeing training, obstacles being built, overseeing literal obstacles being built, and all the administrative obstacles, especially during the COVID pandemic, to a position where you're then sitting at a desk or standing at a desk. Luckily, I've always had a sit stand, looking at spreadsheets, going from how do I phrase something to a customer on the fly in a in-person interaction to having most, maybe half the interactions you have as a recruiter being written, having to, watch for email tone, kind of getting into that new, at least new for me, transition to professional language, professional tact, some office politics. I think, just comes with the territory that you're in the space together and you have to know how to navigate that. I think that transition was almost a coming of age for me professionally. It went from a role that I was so comfortable in. I had borderline created the operations manager role for myself to filling shoes that were outlined by somebody else with an expectation that was at the time still being created. I love being able to create positions that I've stepped into, but recruiting and being a professional recruiter on an HR team comes with a whole host of how-tos that you grow into if you didn't go to school for something like that.
So you're at the University of Oregon now, Mitch. How did you find your current job?
I was with the nonprofit that I first started as a recruiter with for about 2.5 years. I had a brief amount of time with another company. I had hit the point with the first organization where I love the people I worked with. I really loved the team and the work I did, but there wasn't any upward mobility left in the role. I think, learned everything I was going to learn there, and it was time for me to just step away and find some new opportunities and, really step into a larger pond. The next organization I won't take too much time with. It just, sometimes you roll the dice and it's not a good fit. It taught me a lot about how somebody on the job hunting side of, the recruiting cycle should really put the time and effort to research a company, the culture. And even if a position looks like a really good position, having the confidence that you are going to be a good fit with the team you've been talking to through the recruiting process, I think can save a lot of time and effort and maybe some painful realizations later. Just culture fit is important, and it can really play into job satisfaction. Kind of taking just the briefest pause from job hunting and then getting right back to, thinking there'd be a better fit for me somewhere else. The challenges I encountered were, by and large, like that daunting new age numbers game that we all play in so many places. There's website after website, a LinkedIn, an Indeed, a Facebook Jobs, depending on what you're looking for, more specific ones, where you'll have a position posted. You can go and apply. Lots of them are set up for an easy application, and it makes the process super quick. But of course, the faster you can apply, the more applications you can send out. There are more of us on the planet now. It's just the industry, or at least the volume of applications, has exploded.
It has. And so you left the gym. You were at another organization where you were working in recruiting, and you were ready for a change. And you were looking online, and you saw those easy apply numbers. Why the University of Oregon, Mitch? And how did you learn about the position, and what worked for you when you were applying for that job? how did you beat those often intimidating figures that you can find online?
Yeah, how to beat the intimidating figures. I think you look at it from the outside, see what works, do your homework, talk to experts. I will preach the gospel of Max List being such a good resource for anybody because, I mean, it's a field where, some of us are fortunate and we work in the field. So like we have that behind the curtain knowledge of what's going on.
Yeah, and I know there are listeners and viewers who are eager to hear from behind the curtain. So, what talk about your experience both as a candidate when you applied to the University of Oregon, and let's also in a moment talk about your experience as a recruiter. But what worked for you when you were applying for that position at Oregon?
All right. So the numbers game is an important kind of base level to remember. There are more applications going out now than ever. Refining your application for the company and position you are trying to land, super important. It is worth taking the time, especially paying dividends in the interview process. If you took the time to sit down, read the position description, do the tailoring work for your resume and application materials yourself. I know AI is important to know how to use and super helpful, but really thinking about things, I don't think there's any substitute for it. Having done that work, if you get to the point where you're talking to a recruiter, you're in the interview, you've thought about it for longer, and that thought really shows in those conversations. I think can help anybody stand out at that phase to have done the work beforehand. Don't limit yourself. Be creative. Look at different positions in different industries. Look at your skill set. And in your resume, I'd say exemplify achievements that highlight, a robust set of skills for each achievement rather than just listing off what you have done. Being able to cite sources with real numbers, how many successes you've had, how many interactions you do, in X amount of time. All of that takes up slices of the pie chart that together comes into landing that job, catching a recruiter's eye, being that standout candidate. And I have one more thing. Don't limit yourself geographically. Working from home is great, but if you're really looking to move forward in your career, you might have a lot more success broadening a search horizon geographically, being willing to move. It's a huge, difficult step, but it opens so many opportunities.
And when you talk about working not just remotely, but looking at hybrid positions too, which might require you to come into the office 2 or 3 days a week.
Yes.
Yeah. So tailor your resume, be selective, spend the time to learn about the position in the organization. That's great advice in your role as a recruiter. In your article for us, for Max List, you talked about your own search that brought you to the University of Oregon. And one of the things that you called out was the way you organized your search. Mitch, talk a bit about the tools you used and how they helped you when you were looking for the job you have now.
Organization. I think it's one of the skills I learned as a recruiter. You have folder trees for everything, especially as you work in a more and more complicated organization. Doing the same level of professional work, but for yourself, I mean, showcases how well you can do the work if it is, helping you succeed. There's a reason we all have the skills we do, and they help so much with the jobs we take on. But organizing your resume as you tailor it for specific jobs, filing away the different types of positions you have applied with, the different companies you've applied with, keeping track of your applications manually, the Indeeds and LinkedIn's will help you do this as well, and just making sure you're aware of the data they're able to give you. It allows for a good reflective picture of what you're doing for yourself and what you're doing that's either working or not. If you can look at your search, see that you've sent out 100 applications and you haven't heard back, there's information there that is super valuable. And the way forward is always, learning, growing, implementing that new knowledge, and working on the tactics for your overall strategy. If you're not getting the callbacks from initial applications, look at your application material itself. It's a lot of work, but really sometimes tearing it all down and restarting from scratch might be the easiest way to do a revamp rather than taking something that you're finding doesn't work and hitting the details. If you're landing lots of phone calls and you're not moving into an interview, I lean so heavily on my friends at that point. Like, I know for me, I offer friends assistance with resumes, assistance with mock interviews. And when I was in the position where I needed that, I didn't hesitate to ask, just, have somebody do a Q&A. You can write the questions, you can have the internet tell you what's likely to be asked, but practicing that, and it continues forward at each point in the applicant and interview process. Figure out, by tracking the information and keeping your notes organized per interaction set you have, what's working, what's not, and just keep building on what is working.
Well, it's been a great conversation, Mitch. Now tell us, what's your number one job hunting tip?
Oh, the number one job hunting tip has to be persistence. It all floats back to the numbers game. We live in such a high volume age. The age of information has all sorts going on, and to be able to stay dedicated to the project and task of finding that new job, have the fortitude internally to withstand a lot of rejection. I know it's difficult. I have been there, and you almost gamify it. If you know you're going to be rejected 90% of the time and you want to talk to 10 different companies, that's 100 applications out. Like I said, not limiting yourself geographically is how I ended up at the University of Oregon. I love Portland. It is so near and dear to my heart, but a really cool opportunity presented itself 2 hours down south. So, away I went. Didn't limit myself to just the Portland area. Didn't let all of the rejections that I encountered at different stages of the recruiting process with other companies slow me down. It was just, okay, well, this worked. Here's the next week's, 10 new postings for jobs that I'd be interested in. Onward. And just have that momentum, keep it going, do good self-care, stay positive, and just internal fortitude. You'll get through it.
Well, thank you for sharing your story, Mitch. To learn more about Mitch's job search, visit maxlist.org/stories. And check out the MaxList website for dozens of other success stories. On the second Friday of every month, we add a new interview with the MaxList reader who has found a dream job. Go to maxlist.org/stories. In the meantime, thank you for listening to today's bonus episode of Find Your Dream Job. This show is produced by MaxList. Susan Thornton Hoff schedules our guests and writes our newsletter. Lisa Kislin-Barry Anderson manages our social media and creates our transcripts. Our sound engineer and editor is Matt Biarillo, and our music is by Freddie Trujillo. This is Mac Pritchard. See you next week. Have you ever been asked this in a job interview? Tell me about a time when you didn't agree with your boss. What would you say? This is what's called a behavioral interview question, and it's a common tactic. Employers use this kind of question to explore your fit for a job based on your past experience. It can be an easy question to answer if you have the right strategy. I show you how to answer these gotcha questions in our free MaxList guide, 100 Behavioral Interview Questions You Need to Know. To get your copy, visit maxlist.org/questions. You'll also learn 4 simple steps for answering any behavioral interview question. Again, that's maxlist.org/questions. You can count on getting these questions in your next interview. Why not get the answers before you walk into the interview room? Go to maxlist.org/questions.